Welcome to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. For the next hour, you'll hear proven methods for how to live the multiple income streams dream. Ryan is passionate about helping others discover their gifts and start their own business. He's published 5 books, and his courses and group coaching programs have changed the lives of thousands of students all over the world. Ryan's books include Private Label, The Easy Way, Finding Your Grace Place, and his latest, Streams of Income. And now, here's your host, Ryan Rieger.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Streams of Income radio show. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger, and today we have a returning guest, a really good friend, Ryan Horn. Ryan and I have actually not met in person, but we will soon. We need to make that happen. He's a good guy. He was actually on episode 133, and he is returning to talk about just an update, what's going on in his business. We talked a lot about podcasting. He's got a podcast called the Entrepreneurial Man Podcast, and I was a guest on that show as well. We talked about how he gets booked, how he finds guests, the power of podcasts. We talked about his coaching business and how he is narrowing down to certain people that he's looking to work with, why he's doing that, how he's doing that. Just had an awesome conversation. I know you're going to enjoy this. If you want to check out coaching, he's a great person. If you are a man and you have a successful business, he's looking to work with people who want to go to that next level. And so one thing he told me is powerful is that a coach will help you maximize your potential, that it's really hard to maximize your potential on your own. And yeah, you can go to a certain level, but with a coach, you can exceed that. And that's what I want to do in my life and my business and my family. He coaches not just about business, but he wants you to become a well-rounded person and just helps you to maximize every area of your life and your family and your spiritual life. And yes, of course, your business. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Here it is. Here is my interview with Ryan. Ryan, welcome back to Streams of Income.
Hey, Ryan, great to have, I'm excited to be back on.
This is my honor. It's always fun chatting with you. I'm sure you have people that you interview before that you just feel like just a connection with, right? You have those types of like, man, there's something about this person that's, I imagine I'm going to be talking to this person more often than just this one time.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're one of those people.
Well, you are too for me. Do you have a lot of return guests on your podcast?
That's a great question. So that's something I've actually been thinking about a lot lately. I have actually not interviewed the same person twice on my podcast, although there's a lot of people that I would like to bring back. So
yeah, I think you should, because it's a good way to get some updates on what's going on in their life, and then just to go even deeper on things that you couldn't chat about before, because it's hard to get everything in unless you're like Joe Rogan, you go 3 hours long. But most people don't want to listen to me for 3 hours. So
yeah, that's a long podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love having people back on, because I love hearing updates of what's going on in people's lives. So anything that you want to share that's happened in business, personal, anything at all that you think would be relevant to our listeners would enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of the biggest things since the last time I was on, I think it's been close to a year since I was on, so it was a while ago. For me, on the business side of things, I've really focused a lot more on speaking, and that has been an area where I feel like God has been pushing me more into, despite the fact that I never wanted to be a speaker. I never thought I would be a speaker. And so in 2023, especially, I think speaking is going to be a much bigger part of my business. And I'm excited about it. I'm not like, I don't want to do speaking. It's not reluctant. So it's something I've really been working on a lot.
Yeah. Have you been doing a lot of speeches or reaching out to folks let's dig into that? Like how, because there's folks that I'm sure that are listening like, man, I'd love to do that. So what's that process look like for you?
Yeah. So 2022 for me was, I was on a lot of podcasts. So I did a lot of digital speaking. I was on quite a few people's challenges and summits and different things that they had online, which was great. And it gave me tons of practice. And I was just talking to my wife, Brittany, the other day. By doing all those, I feel like I refined my story and kind of, and even my 5-step business breakthrough process a lot. I got much better at talking about it, and clearly and concisely talking about it. So that was a really, really cool side effect, I think, that just kind of naturally happened.
Yep.
But 2023, I'm excited to do a lot more in-person speaking, especially locally. So it's kind of going to be a big focus for me.
Yeah. And is this always going to be you trying to point people into your coaching? Is that kind of the goal of this?
Great question. So for the time being, it is definitely, that's another thing that I kind of simplified things in my business a little bit instead of trying to do 4 or 5 different things at once. So for the time being, yes, but in the future, there's definitely going to be a lot of other things happening.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you? Like what types of groups? Because there may be somebody listening and they're like, hey, I'd love to have him come to my thing. What types of groups, events might you be looking for to speak at?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's definitely entrepreneurs. Anybody that's an entrepreneur, a business owner, even, high-powered CEOs and executives, those type of people, really anybody that wants to, or that's hungry to take their business or their life to the next level. But in particular, business owners or entrepreneurs. Yeah. And I specifically coach men, but I've definitely spoke for groups of men and women many times before as well.
Could you see your what would you like if you gotten invited to speak at a church? Just because I know you're a believer like me.
Yes.
What would that look like for you? Like just because I feel like there's a book. Let me grab it here. It's actually, I think this is something that you would probably highly enjoy just because of the conversations we've had. It's called Mic Drop. A guy named Mike Thacker wrote this. He was actually on my friend's podcast, so I need to have him on. At the back of his book, he says, hey, if you want to chat about these things, just reach out. But he just talks about how the kingdom of God needs entrepreneurs, and that it's always like, if I had to boil this down, it's like we have grown up thinking it's all about that we in the congregation are just the audience. We're there to be entertained. That's the main guy. It's his job to go out and minister to people. We just come and then we go do our week and we come back again in a week and get more spiritual food. But that's a lot of times there's no connection between what happens on Sunday and what happens during the week, but that the church needs entrepreneurs because it's us that have the ideas. It's us that will just make things happen. And not that pastors don't, because they do, but He said pastors have stepped into that void that we as business owners have created. Maybe because we didn't know we weren't invited to. It's all like the church it's all about the church and the pastor, and it's their vision. You got to get behind it. Whether he would say the entrepreneur should provide the vision and the church should get behind the entrepreneurs and work together. So I don't know why I mentioned all that, but like, imagine you were getting in front of church and speaking. Any idea what that topic would be?
That is such a good question. First of all, I've got to say, Mike Thacker, I actually had him as a guest on my podcast.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh. I want to find that episode because I want to listen to it. I was just like amazed.
Yes. So I know Mike. He's an awesome guy. Yes.
Okay. Have you met him in person?
I've not met him in person, and I have not read the book.
Okay.
Although I'm sure we talked about it on the podcast. It was a while ago that I had him on, but yes, he's an awesome guy.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, for me, yeah. For me, to be honest, if I got asked to speak at a church, I'm not 100% sure what I would share. I guess it would kind of depend on the context. We didn't
talk about this question beforehand. We don't talk about
it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the context. If it's at a men's event, if it's just in front of the whole church or whatever. But I probably would share different parts of my testimony. Maybe depending on the audience, maybe even kind of my entrepreneurial journey, because I think it's really easy for people to look at someone and be like, oh man, it must be nice to be Ryan or so-and-so or whoever, but it doesn't matter what their life looks like now on the outside. Everybody has struggles and everybody has ups and downs in different areas of their life all the time. So I love, that's why I love bringing entrepreneurs on my show and interviewing them and digging into the past, because then people are like, whoa, I had no idea that, this guy, now he's making $20 million a year, but he was, bankrupt and living under a bridge for 6 months.
Yes.
So I love sharing that stuff because I think it reminds people that, oh yeah, okay, this guy has gone through some stuff, and it's not just everything is great. Because I think it's very easy for me, and I think everybody, to think that, like, oh man, look at, poor me, I'm struggling right now, and this person's life is perfect, but it's never the case. So
oh yeah, definitely not. My goodness. Wow, we go so many different directions. One thing, you were on any idea how many podcasts you were on last year?
it's a good question. I should actually go count. I think I was on around 40.
Jeez, that's awesome. That's really good.
Yes.
Wow.
So I was going at a pretty good clip there for a while. I slowed down a little bit towards the end of the year, but it was great. I love it.
Yeah. So talk about, I know that in my opinion, being on somebody else's stage is probably one of the best ways to get your message out there and to find a new audience. I mean, you can definitely do Facebook ads and all that, and those have been a blessing to me in my business. But when you get on stage with somebody, I literally, like, being on somebody's podcast is the same as if I had a conference and I had you come speak, because I am introducing you, we're having a conversation, and we have people that are out there listening, maybe not live, obviously, because we're recording this,
right?
But it's the same as giving somebody your stage. And so it's a big deal, and it's a free way usually to get your message across, and you have that credibility of that other person. Like me being on your podcast gives me a whole lot more credibility in the eyes of your followers, because you took the time to invite me, and it's almost like, in a way, kind of like you're endorsing me. You're not, but it's like, Ryan 100%. Thought it was important to have Ryan Rieger on the podcast, so we should listen. And they're probably listening for you because they like you, but then some of the people may, who's this Ryan Rieger guy, and come follow me. So it's an awesome strategy. But how did you get booked on so many podcasts? 40 is a lot. And I know we've talked about this before offline.
Yes.
What's your strategy for finding those interviews and for finding all the interviews, all the people that come on your podcast? That's awesome that you had Mike on, by the way. I'm going to listen to that interview.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So for me, a couple different things. I would say once you get going and once you're on some shows, it's a lot easier to be on more.
That's true.
Because I always ask for referrals. So I'll ask people, hey, do you know anybody else that has a show that I would be a great fit for? So that's probably the easiest way to get other people on my podcast and to get booked on more podcasts.
Yep.
And as you start building relationships, that becomes easier and easier, and you start to become known more and more. There's also a great service out there called Podmatch. So Alex Sanfilippo started it. Awesome guy. I've interviewed him on my podcast as well.
Oh, cool.
He's an awesome guy. Very, very smart. And he started that, and I got in kind of on almost the ground floor. Like, I think I'm still on a free plan, because back when I joined, it was cool. 100% free.
Yeah.
But that's been great. I've got quite a few guests from there, but also just within my network, and reaching out to people. And one thing that I would say, that I learned as well, is that, there were people within my network that I didn't necessarily directly know, but I had a connection to, that in my head, I was like, I don't even know if I should reach out to this person, because they seem like they're so far up here. Right.
Yeah.
But you never know unless you ask. And
Yes.
so I've had a couple people on my podcast where I was like, I don't even know if I should reach out to them. Reached out to them. They came on. It ended up being great. And
that's awesome.
now we have a relationship together.
That's
as well,
so cool. Talk about that for a second, because I feel like if you did these people have podcasts? These couple people you have in mind right now?
No, actually, no.
Okay, but they have stages, or they have an email list, probably.
Yes, they have.
And it would be awesome if they promoted your stuff, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I think this is one of my secrets, and it's not really a secret because I talked about this before, and other people, I learned this from somebody else. Having a podcast is a great way to get on the radar of other people who are above you in business, that have a bigger business, have more email, have a larger email list, because obviously it's unless it's Tony Robbins, I mean, they're busy or whatever. It's an opportunity to be on your stage. And if they're smart, they're going to be like, you know what? He may only have I have 50,000 downloads a week. This guy may only have 500, but that's 500 new people that may have never heard of me. And it gives me an opportunity to get in front, get on his stage. And so it's a big deal. And it's not like you're asking them to fly to Minnesota in the winter for a conference. It's like literally you're going to jump on a Zoom call for 30 minutes and I can get introduced to a new audience. And so it's a powerful tool. And a lot of people will say yes, that you may not even realize that you could ever get in front of.
100%. No, I couldn't agree more. But I think it's all about, especially when you're reaching out to people that are a lot more successful than you, it's all about going and adding value first.
Yes.
So if I'm presenting them with, hey, you want to come on my stage and talk about what you do, and I'll introduce you to my audience, I'm adding value to them, right? Versus if I didn't have a podcast and I was just like, hey, can I talk to you for 5 minutes? And they have 100 people like that asking them that every day.
Yes.
And so yes. So it's really cool to be able to have a platform, whether that's a podcast or, there's other things you can do as well. It is really cool because you're adding value to them, even though maybe you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said yes. Because it feels amazing for you as well, but it's a win-win.
Sure. Yeah. And have you noticed, do you even look at your analytics on your podcast?
I used to look at them a lot more. I'll say that.
Yeah, I don't look at much either.
Yeah.
But have you noticed have you seen the people, like those two people you're thinking about? Do they have them like more downloads than all the other episodes? Or do you have episodes like that where somebody has a larger audience, a larger digital, if they promoted it to their audience?
Right. So yeah, the couple of people that I'm thinking of, they're not like my most downloaded episodes, but there definitely was a bump.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily even think either of them promoted it to their audience, but just because they're more recognizable, I mean, more people, even me promoting it, more people are going to be like, oh, Ryan had this guy on, let me go check it out.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it also is pretty awesome because it gives you more credibility when you're reaching out to other people that are higher level, like, oh, well, I had this guy, and this guy on. It just it makes it so much easier.
Oh, for sure. So you name drop all the way. That's so awesome. Anything else about podcasting? Because I feel like there's it's growing. Anything you've learned in it? Tips, tricks?
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is awesome. I love podcasting. So one thing I would say, because there's a lot of people that want to start podcasts, right? And some of my coaching clients have wanted to or have started podcasts, is that you should make sure that you're in it for the long haul and that you're in it for the right reasons and that you're very well prepared before you just go out and launch it. Because there are, I don't remember what the stats are, but it's something like the average podcast lasts like 7 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not, most people get into it and they're excited and then they realize it's more work than they thought. And, they thought that they were going to have sponsors paying them like $5,000 an episode right away.
Yep.
And all this stuff. And it can definitely be awesome for a lot of reasons, but especially getting started out, a lot of people don't make it very far.
Sure. Or that doesn't move the needle in their business. Like they don't immediately have a huge bump of emails from their first few episodes.
Right. That too.
It takes consistency and just doing it over the long haul. Mine has been around since August of 2019 and I've not missed a week. I look at people who have podcasts that go out more than once a week and I'm like, man, how do you do it? That's amazing. Sometimes it's a struggle for me to do an episode. So like the episode we're recording right now, I'll just be honest with everybody. Like this is a Monday. It's going to air on Friday. Now I have some friends that have like months of episodes that are done, that are, weekly episodes. They got several months already booked that if I recorded with them now, it may not air until August. That blows my mind that they're that organized, have that much. I don't know. That's just not me. I've never operated that way, but I think it's smart. What about you? Like, what's your podcast like as far as like how often do you do it? And I know it's changed recently for you.
Yes. So
you do batch content or do a whole bunch of episodes in a row, a bunch of recordings, and then you're set for another several weeks.
So I was laughing when you were saying that because I've been on both sides of it. I like to be about 4 to 6 weeks out, sometimes 8 weeks out, and I have been.
Yeah.
And I've also had times where it's like, oh my gosh, I have an episode that's supposed to go live like tomorrow, and I don't have a guest. Like, and so I understand both sides of it. It can be stressful, but it's definitely nice to be organized and at least be a little bit in advance.
Yeah.
But yeah, my podcast goes out 3 times a week. One is an interview. One is just a recap of the interview, which is me talking for 5 to 10 minutes, kind of going through my notes of here's the biggest things that I learned from the person I interviewed, or that stood out to me. And then on Mondays, I do a 5 to 10 minute episode of just solo of me talking about various different topics. And so I've been doing 3 a week for a while now.
Wow.
And I will say, to be honest here as well, that I actually have taken a little break on my podcast because I think I was getting more burned out than I realized. And then I also got sick for a couple of weeks, so I literally couldn't record anything. And so I kind of pumped the brakes a little bit, and I'm actually just getting ready to get back into it and get back into the swing of 3 a week, and I'm excited to do that. But
are you going to go back to Podmatch and find guests, or do you have a lineup of people that you're going to reach out to?
Yeah, so I mean, some of both. I have people on Podmatch reaching out to me all the time asking to be a guest. So I'll occasionally go on there and kind of filter through and see if there's anybody that I think would be a great guest. But I definitely have a list of people that is kind of like my dream list that I'm reaching out to as well. And I actually have like 4 or 5 episodes recorded, ready to go right now.
Cool.
So I just need to finish editing them, and they'll be all ready to go.
That's awesome. When you reach out to people, like are you doing is it an email, or how are you reaching out to folks to invite them on your show? The ones that are not Podmatch.
Great question. Yeah. So there's Podmatch, obviously. And then depending on, so I mean, for the most part, if it's not coming from Podmatch, it's people that I have some type of connection with. Either I have a friend that knows them, or I know them, maybe even if we just met at a conference one time or something. So there's some connection, or we're friends on Facebook or whatever. So typically it's not an email. Sometimes it is. But yeah, so I use a variety of different ways. As much as possible, I try to get an introduction from somebody that knows them, because obviously that's going to be the best thing to do, but that's not always possible.
Yeah. Do you ever, if you reach out to somebody do you ever have people on that you don't really know, that's like kind of like this is those 2 people you mentioned, were those referrals, or those people that you just, hey, out of the blue, I'm going to try I don't know if I can get them, but I want to try anyway.
So let me think here. Okay. So yeah, the 2 people that I had in mind, I did not personally know either of them, but I had a friend of each of them previously on my podcast.
Got it.
So I was able to mention,
when you reach out, I had your friend, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, here's my podcast. Here's what the mission, the vision of it is, and why I'm doing it. And I had your friend so and so on, and awesome. So that usually helps. Yeah,
for sure it does, man. We could talk about podcasts forever. I had no idea we'd go that direction, but as you're talking, I think of other questions. I want to ask about, because recently you mentioned you are narrowing down your clients, and talk about that process of like who you used to work with before and who you're looking for now, and just how you decided to do that, why you did that, how you practically did that. Just anything related to being able to focus in on a certain avatar.
Yeah, so I think it's natural for most people to not want to do that, because they're like, well, I could help all these other people, or, I don't want to be pigeonholed into this one place.
Yes.
But in general, it's much easier if you are known for one thing. And if it's like, oh, well, Ryan's the specialist at helping these particular people with this particular thing. But it's been kind of a back and forth for me. I think it's always you just have to take action. As you do that, you're going to get more and more clarity type of thing. Which in the past has definitely been something I've struggled with, where it's like, man, I want to make sure it's 100% like this. Then I'll go start taking action. Right. That's not how it works out. You know that, obviously. Right. And so, yeah, for me, it's been kind of a back and forth. It's been an ongoing thing, and I'm still getting clarity on it. I don't think it's ever a time where it's like, oh, I know 100% for sure, the next 20 years is exactly what I'm going to be doing and who I'm going to be helping and how I'm going to be helping them. Yeah. So yeah, for me, I used to more in general just help businessmen. So in my coaching business has always been helping men specifically. So it's been targeted in that way, but it was previously really anybody in any business and at any stage of the business. So it could be starting out, it could be, well along. It could be somebody really struggling in their business, could be somebody really successful.
Yeah.
And that was good. And I got a wide variety of people. But one of the things that I was noticing as I was working, especially with a lot of people that were just getting started and just trying to launch things, it wasn't that I couldn't help those people, and it wasn't that I didn't want to help those people. But really what I started to see was that there was a different set of people that I could help even more. And I started to feel like God was calling me to helping specifically those people. And so who I work with now is Christian businessmen that are already successful. They've already been in business for at least a year or more, and they're already making 100K or more a year in their business. And it is definitely two very different stages and two very different people. If you're working with somebody that's maybe they've been an employee for 20 years and they're just trying to launch a business for the first time, or somebody that's owned a bunch of different businesses for a long time, and you're just going in and helping them maximize what they already have. And so those are the type of people, and as I looked at kind of the people that I was coaching as well, one of the guys that I really enjoyed coaching, I was somebody that came to me and he was already had 2 businesses. He'd been in business for a long time. He's already fairly successful, and I helped him triple his business. Wow. And it was really cool. Because it wasn't like I had to, go remake his whole business and let's start from the ground up. And, and so I love doing that. And really what I love doing, so obviously I like helping people make more money and grow their business, but I love seeing the impact of that. And I also love helping men maximize their potential in every area of their life. So that guy that I just mentioned, who I helped him triple his business, he just gave me a testimonial recently, and he talked about, of course, Ryan helped me triple my business, and I did a $73,000 real estate deal, and I'm building my dream house and all of that, which is great, and I love that. But he also said, and Ryan has helped me be way more intentional with my wife and kids. I only have so much time, especially with my kids, right? They're getting older and all of this. And so that to me is I really love that. I love seeing people grow their business and all that, but seeing that is awesome, because it doesn't really matter if you crush it in business, but you end up divorced and your kids hate you, right? So so I love coaching the whole person, right? Because it's all connected.
It is. Yes, it is. I've always said that if you have a successful business but your marriage is horrible, and I don't know, thank God I don't have a horrible marriage, but I would think that even if I had the successful business that I have, but then at home it's just a train wreck, it would make everything really bad.
Absolutely.
Wow, man. Well, those of you would be, interested to know that I actually signed up to be a client with Ryan, because I, known him for a while now, and eager to see how he can help me. I love, here's what you said that really kind of sold me on, and I already was like, oh, this would be cool, because I already been thinking, even before you called me, like, I wonder if that might be a good thing for me to have a coach, because I know all successful people have coaches. And you mentioned Tony Robbins, how he has like a coach in almost every area, like more rather than just one coach, he's probably have 5 coaches, who knows, but you may know the answer to that. But you said that people need I asked you, like, why do people need coaches? And it's because you said they need a coach to help maximize their impact. And so that was awesome. And maybe we can get to the Tom Landry quote too, but tell me about that guy specifically. Don't give me any names, but what did you, when you tripled his business, and can you narrow that down to a couple of strategies, things that you helped him do that did that?
That's a great question. So, so for the most part, it wasn't like, I gave him some amazing business strategy, something he'd never tried before or whatever. to be honest, it was a lot of the basics. And so, I mean, just walking people through my 5-step business breakthrough framework, it's clarity, commitment, coaching, courageous action, and course correction. Really, with a lot of people I coach, it's going through that again and again and again.
Yeah.
And clarity, I think, is so underrated because even people that, if I asked you, hey, what are your goals this year? And they could give me a pretty good answer. It's something that I think you constantly need to be getting more and more clear, because as you're taking action, things are going to be changing.
Yes.
And it's something, even in my own business, in my own life, I notice all the time. I'm like, man, when I have 90% clarity versus 100% clarity, it's totally different. When you're more clear, you're more confident. When you're more confident, you take more action.
Yes.
When you're not very clear on things, it usually holds us back. You don't take as much action as you would or as you could, and you're less confident. And lots of times also, if you're taking less action, you're going to be getting less results, and it can turn into a negative cycle where it's all of a sudden like, man, your confidence is down here and you're wondering why you're not taking any action and your business is tanking. Right. But it works the other way as well, where it's like, man, you get into action, you get more confident, you take more action, and on and on and on. But yeah, so I mean, it wasn't anything groundbreaking, but the thing is, it's really hard to try to coach yourself. We can't really coach ourselves. And so having somebody else that's not biased and that can see your blind spots, because we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
Is so valuable, I think, especially on an ongoing basis. And I think when we were having a conversation before, I mentioned this, it's like different people have different capacities. Some people on their own could go build $1 million business.
Yeah.
Some people on their own would never even be able to get a business off the ground. Right. But it doesn't matter. Even the person that has the $1 million business, if they have a coach, it could be a $2 million business or a $5 million business or a $10 million business. And so, I mean, God didn't create us to do life alone, right? We were created to be in community and to not just rely on ourselves and, be a hermit living out in the woods, right?
Right. So good. What's that, Tom? Do you have that Tom Landry quote handy?
I do. Yeah. This is such a great quote. I love this. I think this is like coaching in a nutshell. So the quote is, a coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you've always known you could be.
So you can be who you always known you can be. That's so good. There's a lot of scriptures we could bring up that kind of are like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah. You could probably say the same thing about a pastor, having a pastor in your life. You're going to church, at least feeding on the word. Man,
absolutely.
That's so good. So good. And it's also, I've mentioned this before, and the fact that you can't read your own label. It's having somebody on the outside look into your business is helpful, or your whole life even. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great analogy as well, because you can't, like, you're so in your life and so in your business and so in your situation most of the time that you're only seeing it one way a lot of times.
Right.
And so having other people to be able to speak into it or ask you great questions or ask you the hard questions. That's one thing too, that I think where there's a difference between having, friends in a good community versus a coach. Because as a coach, I'm not going to be afraid to ask you the questions that your friends wouldn't ask you.
Yes. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. What, where can people go to find, is it just coachryanhorn.com?
Yeah, they can go to coachryanhorn.com. My podcast, there's a link to the podcast there. There's a link to apply for a free coaching call there. Basically, everything is on the website. Cool. But yeah, the podcast is the Extraordinary Man Podcast. And And
you've had one woman on there, your wife, right?
I have, yes, I have. And the funny thing about that, related to what we were talking about before, is it was literally like a Tuesday, and I didn't have a guest for my episode that was going live the next day.
That's awesome.
And we were talking about having Brittany on the show, but I was like, you need to be on the show and you need to be on today.
Clear your schedule, so I need to get you on an episode.
Yes. So that's awesome. How that happened. But I need to have her back on again.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a couple minutes left here before I need to run too. But tell me, like, you've interviewed so many people. I would imagine you've learned a ton from those interviews. I mean, I feel like it's almost like Darren Hardy, when he had Success Magazine, his job was to interview these very successful people and put those interviews in the magazine. You're doing the exact same thing with the podcast. So am I. Yours is way more focused on men, businessmen, and so mine's a little bit more all over the place. But what have you learned? What are some of the things that you've learned? Like if you had to write a book called All the Success Tips I've Learned from My Podcast Guests, if you had to pull some out real quick off the top of your head, it's not a question we talked about. What are some things you've learned from all these entrepreneurs that would be a blessing to my audience?
Such a great question. Yeah, I mean, so much stuff that I've learned, but what I would say is that I've noticed patterns between almost all of them, especially the really successful people. And in one way, I would say it's reinforced my own 5-step framework that you got to be clear, committed, have a coach, take courageous action, and course correct along the way. You're not going to get it right the first time. But the other thing the thing that popped in my head when you said that was that it's it's not going to work out the first time almost ever. Everybody on my show has a story where it's like, oh yeah, I launched this and then I went bankrupt, and then I launched this and that didn't work either. And then it was a 10-year overnight success story, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. Like wherever you're at right now, if you're struggling, if you're doing well, if you're somewhere in the middle, like it's a process and it's a journey, and it's going to take time. The biggest thing that's going to determine whether or not you're successful or not is if you give up or not.
Yes.
You keep going, you will be successful eventually. Yes. It may take longer than you think. Things don't usually happen as fast as we want, but that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned.
That's so good. In his book, Mike, in this Mic Drop, Mike talks about how, for him as an entrepreneur, failure is not failure like everybody else sees it. And failure is actually just a learning experience. No big deal. We just figured that out. That didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. Do you feel like nowadays is probably like 40 years ago, starting a business is a lot different than it is now? Because I tell people that it's so easy. Sometimes it's free even to try out an idea in today's world with the internet. So if you have an idea to do something, just go do it. Go try it. Can you think of, has never been another time in history where it's been so easy to try out an idea and quote fail on it, which again, no big deal. Okay, that didn't work. What will work? And some of these things are just going to take some time. Literally, some of these things are free to try out. Like your business right now. If you had to start your business over again, you could do it it doesn't cost anything. I mean, you don't even need a website to be a coach. You literally could call up a few friends. Hey, you've asked me about this stuff before. I'm thinking about going into coaching, and let me give you a free coaching call. You don't even have to have a Zoom account. Just use a cell phone, which is what you do for your calls anyway. So talk about that for a second, just getting started. And then we got about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. So what I would say related to that is, I mean, I wasn't born 40 years ago, but I can imagine that it was completely different, right?
I was. I was alive.
Yes. I mean, with the internet, it's literally anybody can start a variety of businesses. I mean, like that. And one thing I would say is that I think in general, when you're trying to start a business, it's a good idea to keep your budget very low. So if you don't have a lot trying to start a business, you actually might be at an advantage, because somebody that has a ton of money is just going to go spend it on stuff that probably won't work very well anyway. Hey, I got 10 grand. Let me try Facebook ads. But if you don't have experience with it and you don't understand, you don't have a good understanding of who you want to serve and how you want to serve them and all that, you will blow through that really quickly. And it will be an expensive lesson to learn. I mean, the biggest thing is just get out there and try, because so many people, I talk to so many people that are like, oh yeah, Ryan, that's great. You have a business, I want to start this business too, or I've been thinking about starting this for a long time, or, here's what my dream is. But they never actually do anything. It's like I talk to the same people a year later and they're like, oh yeah, I'm still thinking about this. Oh, but I can't do it yet because of, X, Y, Z. So I would say, just if you know that you're called to start a business, just get out there and start taking action. You don't have to have everything perfect to get started. It's best to get started before it's perfect, right? Just go start taking some action and see what happens. But the biggest thing is getting started and then just taking action. It doesn't matter. It's never about, Tony Robbins has a great quote that I love. It's something along the lines of it's never about resources. It's always about resourcefulness, right?
Ooh.
Money is a resource. Time is a resource. All these things, right? People are like, oh, I don't have the money to start a business. I don't have the time to start a business. I don't know how to do that. Blah, blah, blah. But those are all resources, and it's all about resourcefulness. If you want it bad enough, you will figure out a way to make it happen. Plain and simple.
That's so good. That's a great place to end, man. Thank you for being on again. As you know, anytime you ever want to jump back on, we could talk about all this stuff for a whole lot longer. This was good. So just always let me know. Hey, I got something I want to share.
Absolutely.
Let's jump back on and do it, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. This
Awesome.
was fun.
Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you.
You've been listening to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. From right here in the Dallas Metroplex, Ryan teaches several entrepreneurial courses and group coaching programs to students all over the world. Be sure to listen next week at the same time for Streams of Income with Ryan Rieger.